That's the chair that I use when I watch TV. I like that chair, save it for me. You should be quiet when the TV's on. Don't play your guitar when the TV's on. I got 3 chances, 3 pair of pants. I'm from the Rochester area, and we used to dance. But don't dance when the TV's on. Don't dance when the TV's on. Well, I got religion, but I barely survived. I saw Leave It to Beaver on Channel 5. It was really Channel 8. Can't see the picture when I'm out in the sun. Too bright for the picture when I'm out in the sun. Hello. I have a book. I read a book. Yes, this is a channel about books. I'm like, what am I doing here? I'm talking about books. Why am I talking about books? I don't know. I'm talking about books. This book is about books and literature and about electronic communications and about the technology of communication, how we speak to one another. It is called Amusing Ourselves to Death, Public Discourse in the Age of Show Business by Neil Postman. Introduction by Andrew Postman. This is the 20th anniversary edition of the book. You can see that it's a library book, and you can see that it's rather traveled. So yeah, it's the 20th anniversary of the book that was actually written in 1985. And Andrew, the son, does a 2005 was when the 20th anniversary was, and when this book came out. So yeah, so this book is almost 20 years old itself. And Andrew Postman in Brooklyn, New York, wrote a little introduction beginning to talk about a lot of the things that his father speaks about in this book, sort of explaining them to people since they are passing things in the culture, since Neil Postman does mention some things, basically TV things that are on TV back, 40 years ago now. So maybe some of the people who are looking at this won't know what those things are anyway. But yeah, so Neil Postman is important to me because I read another of his books called The Disappearance of Childhood, which talked a lot about the difference between photography, photographic imagery, and as a communication device, and text. So like a photograph, you see a photograph and it's in your mind. There's no argument with the photograph. There's no discourse about the photograph. Really, after you see the photograph, you see the photograph, and whatever is depicted in the photograph is in your mind. Whereas with text, you know, you could say, well, that guy said this, but it might not be true, and you know, it's a different sort of experience for the receiver of the information by these different technologies. And that's what Neil Postman was, a media studies guy, and this is, I think, media studies is important because we are barraged by these various media. I came to Neil Postman through Douglas Rushkoff, I think, because I was somehow interested in Douglas Rushkoff many, many years ago. I don't know how I got interested in Douglas Rushkoff, but I'm continuing to be a follower and supporter, actually, of his Team Human Patreon thingy. So yeah, Douglas Rushkoff, who's also kind of a media guy, only more toward computers, which didn't really come into vogue that much in the lifetime of Neil Postman, who died in the early 2000s, I believe. Neil Postman died at age 72, which is my current age. So maybe I'll die this year too. Who knows? I sort of thought maybe I would. Anyway, he talks about the difference in the culture between one medium and another. One medium and another. So like he talks about Lincoln-Douglas debates, for instance. I'm going to read a little bit here about the chapter 4, the typographical mind. The first of the 7 famous debates between Abraham Lincoln and Stephen A. Douglas took place on August 21, 1858, in Ottawa, Illinois. Their arrangement provided that Douglas would speak first for an hour, Lincoln would take an hour and a half to reply, Douglas an hour and a half to rebut Lincoln's reply. This debate was considerably shorter than those in which the two men were accustomed. In fact, they had tangled several times before, and in all their encounters had been much lengthier and more exhausting. For example, on October 16th, 1854, in Peoria, Illinois, Douglas delivered a 3-hour address, which Lincoln, by agreement, was to respond. When Lincoln's turn came, he reminded the audience that it was already 5 p.m., that he would probably require as much time as Douglas, and that Douglas was still scheduled for a rebuttal. He proposed, therefore, that the audience go home, have dinner, return refreshed for 4 more hours of talk. The audience amiably agreed, and matters proceeded as Lincoln had outlined. So yeah, that's it takes a certain amount of time to present in the beginning how our attention spans were a great deal longer, and that actually America was quite a literary society. People could read, and that made a big difference in what went on here. The early America was very much a reading place, as well as several other things, but that is part. And they read, yet they you only could read during daytime hours or by candlelight or some other sort of means like that. So it was. I don't know how people could read at night without electric lights. So anyway, and gas lights. He also said that was problematic as well. So and all that happened, in the end of the 19th century, the 1800s. So back to the book. Yeah. So what I get from Postman is basically what I can tell you, because I can't deliver the text of the book. This is basically what he talks about in the book. This is going to be a short, brief television show about a book, which is kind of absurd because a book is a completely different thing in a completely different language form. And actually, I am quite a literary. I'm the typographical society that he refers to in the past, as opposed to electronic society, is something that I'm really kind of into, I guess, and that's why I read all these books. And somewhere along the line, I got the idea, actually through my mother, and through the media, I guess, that television, oddly enough, through my mother, I got the idea that I should be reading. I was terrible in school. I basically did not participate, in any school, grade school beginning. I was kind of terrified when I went to first grade at age 5, before I was before I was 6 in November. So yeah, I was put in school at age 5, and I was completely unprepared for that. And the same thing as well. My brother was born on Christmas Eve, so the family was all off on this other thing while I was trying to deal with first grade, and of course they didn't really help. But my mother, who didn't really seem to like me that much, I don't know, but my mother was very much interested in me reading. And they were both readers. They would read novels. My mother graduated from high school. My dad did not graduate from high school. He took off and joined the Navy, but he was also a reader. And so I was not, they did not read to me. They did not read like Dr. Seuss books, stuff like that. I still have no familiarity with that stuff. Yeah, they did not read that to me, so I was not a reader until another media brought me into reading, which was basically movies. My dad suggested I read Errol Flynn's My Wicked, Wicked Ways, which I did and loved, because I loved Errol Flynn as a glamorous, handsome, swashbuckling movie star. He was Robin Hood, for Christ's sake. And Robin Hood is, the 1938 Robin Hood is really an excellent movie. So, and in Technicolor, and it was just really impressive. So I read that book and really liked it, and it was not really suitable for a 7th grader, which is when I started reading. Same time Kennedy was being assassinated, I was reading. And I was reading then, so I wasn't involved. I was not in Dealey Plaza reading. I was in Ohio in the 7th grade reading. So yeah, then I got into James Bond books, which is also movies. It was all what was coming out in the movies. So I was reading James Bond books. So that was really the beginning of my reading, was My Wicked, Wicked Ways, and then James Bond books. So all this sort of boy stuff, So, yeah, and my mom took me to reading. I never read this stuff for school, what I was assigned. And, I have displayed issues of dyslexia, which, when I'm writing things down, I will switch the letters and so forth. So, I think I do have some kind of reading issues, and I always read very slowly. And my mom took me to these SRA things at the Massillon YMCA, where I was to pick out these things in these colored folders, and then my speed would pick up, and I just couldn't deal with timed things, was what my problem was. Whenever the timer was going, I just shut down. So yeah, Neil Postman, Amusing Ourselves to Death. He talks that this society is all sort of a political language, everything, debates now. I mean, they even took debates away from the League of Women Voters, who were running them for years and years, and give them to some other political corporate commission or whatever that is running them now, and I mean, and the quality of the people who we have, like, we have this, well, anyway, I won't get into all that. But but yeah, I really think that you should explore the ideas of Neil Postman if you are interested in literacy and in books, and in where the society is going. He talks about the difference between Brave New World by Aldous Huxley and George Orwell's 1984, and clearly Huxley is the one who is winning that argument, if there is an argument. Well, both of them are in certain societies, as he states in here. Orwellian mind control sort of thing is working, whereas in America it's much more a Huxley thing, where they just throw a whole bunch of stuff at you, and none of it means anything after a while because it's just a lot of stuff coming out of the same medium of television, and we expect everything to be entertainment in television and come to some sort of resolution in television. All this and everything must be turned into entertainment, turned into made theatrical on television. Of course, there are discussion shows, and there are still discussions, and this is what YouTube is. A lot of it, a lot of it is kind of a literary reaction to television, in that people are talking, and in the talking head thing, like I do mostly here. Like, I can do editing tricks, I can do fast cuts, I can do this and that, but I don't, because I just want to, well, it's too much work for one thing, and I just wanted to. I just want it to be like I want it to be a text thing, basically. Yeah, I'm too lazy to write them down anymore, and I want to improvise the review, or acknowledge the books I'm reading, and so that's why I'm doing this. Yeah, so he goes through it, and it's a short book. It's only 163 pages, so it's easy to consume in a day or so. And I really think that Neil Postman is important because as these new technologies come on, they have results, as we know from the internet and even the technologies of social media, how that has been such a disruption in the last few years, messing with the election cycle, for instance, and the perceptions of everything, and how we can participate, the level of participation, the rise of fringe ideas that maybe were kept down by the controlled media. But in the Huxley Orwell thing, I think we're going to get a little bit more Orwellian in the Western world, because they are looking to throw things in the memory hole, to censor. There is more censoring going on of certain ideas. We saw that around the the revelations of the Matt Taibbi and others, and the Twitter files, how the FBI basically and government agencies was asking the people who are running Twitter to slow down certain posts, to alter them. Anyway, so yeah, what I'm trying to get to here is that we're going to get more of an Orwell thing, in that they are going to start censoring more things on YouTube and other things, because there's a lot of stuff that coming up that aren't a lot of voices that aren't under control, and that are alternative voices, which are deemed by power to be intolerable in many situations. So yeah, so what else do I have to say about this? Not that much, I guess. I mean, not that I can think of right now, but yeah, I believe in reading. I like to read. I'm going to continue reading. It's as I said, earlier, I probably was just sort of pleasing my mother in doing the reading in a way, although she probably wouldn't have liked my wicked, wicked ways. But yeah, I think I'm trying to be a good mama's boy here, and actually my dad was a reader as well, and he believed in the power of literature and changing minds, because he bought boxes in 1964. He bought boxes of None Dare Call It Treason by John Stormer, I think the guy's name was. Anyway, it was a very much an anti-communist book, and it was there was a lot of like John Birch Society activity around the 1964 Goldwater campaign, and my dad was for Goldwater and talking about how the communists were going to take over everything, and he distributed this book down there called Treason, like would buy a whole box of them and pass them out to guys at work and stuff like that. So that was, I kind of talked to him about it much later on. He actually ended up feeling that George Bush the Jr., he died during the George Bush the Jr. eras, and he thought George Bush the Jr. was a fascist. So he had completely gone over to some other side where we're all of us kind of wandering in the dark here. Yeah, he talks about the telegraph, and he talked about the telegraph in the Disappearance of Childhood too, how the telegraph was the first means of really getting stuff, really across the country, whereas, before the telegraph, if you had a train track, you could get the message from here to there at basically 35 miles an hour, but with the telegraph, it's the speed of electricity. And so then you get all this news from nowhere, and news that is not relevant particularly to what you can do. And like he talks about television in the very beginning of the book, and like in the beginning of your day, say you put on the morning news and you hear about this disaster, you hear about that disaster, you hear about inflation, you hear about this war, you hear about that, you hear about various diseases coming, you hear about global warming and how the world's going to like end anyway in 50 years or something like that. And so, he says like, well, what is all this information for? I mean, what exactly am I going to do with this information that I'm hearing on my morning news? Well, not much, because it's not relevant at all to anything in my daily life. I mean, it could mean something sometime. I mean, the wars going on could result in a nuclear war, or could expand, and could, if I had a child, could or a grandchild, could involve them in the war, or could involve nuking New York or whatever. So yeah, ultimately we are all connected, but a lot of these stories about what goes on with this or that, or what somebody freaked out at McDonald's or whatever, are completely irrelevant and have nothing to do with me basically ever. So it's just a lot of data that is entertaining, and that's why it is brought to us to entertain us. And that's one of the issues he says with the book, is that entertainment, when the point of all communication is to entertain, it affects the quality of the communication, as opposed to a communication to instruct us in something or to warn us of something. It's a different sort of process than a communication that just entertains. And I'm trying to give you information. I'm being kind of low on the entertainment, I guess. I'm not very entertaining or charming, So I'm not particularly following the rules of television. I should get somebody younger and more beautiful to play me, somebody who doesn't go with their jaw like, weird old man that I do. Anyway, so yeah, it's a light reflection off of a car window. It's probably giving me a nice little lighting effect on my face out the window here. I'm on the 3rd floor. So yeah, amusing ourselves to death, and I think that's what's happening. We're basically entertained, and we're going to be entertained, and nothing is important because we're all just, it's all entertainment, and you know, it's all just a show, it's all just a drama, it's all coming from the same thing, and it's like, oh yeah, there's a war going on somewhere, but not here, so you know, it doesn't really matter. It's probably going to work out all right, and then there'll be some sort of new war in a couple more years. So then we'll just hear about that, and you know, whatever, and you know, maybe there's global warming, maybe the sea will rise, and maybe it won't. But I'm not going to be here, so it doesn't matter to me. Amusing ourselves to death as I try to bore you to death. Maybe I should just stay on. Make one of those. You ever see those like 5-hour live videos or something? Like I look through YouTube sometimes and scan the channels, and it's like Leslie and one yesterday. It was kind of an interesting topic of some sort. I don't know what it was, but then I looked at how long it ran. It was 5 hours and 50 minutes. Like, how does anyone go on for 5 hours? But I'm not going to go on for 5 hours today because I would bore myself, and I don't want to bore myself. Please read Neil Postman, or become familiar with media studies ideas. It affects the means of what it comes into is also affects what comes into you, all right? And what you vomit out afterwards, what I'm vomiting out afterwards. It's like how it got in is how it comes out, or something like that. Like and subscribe.